We are honored to introduce our 4 guest speakers to discuss the theme of women in digital leadership. What does it mean to be a leader in the digital sphere? Miriam Kassou is a Moroccan certified big data engineer and an IT consultant. She is an alumna of the Tech Women program and was hosted by Intel to work on her self-driving cars technologies project. Miriam is the co-founder and board member of the first think tank in Morocco for digital sovereignty. Aya Moualem is a Lebanese engineer and co-founder of All Girls Code, an initiative that has empowered more than 500 young girls in the MENA to pursue undergraduate STEM studies. Aya is a PhD student and Knight Hennessy Scholar at Stanford University, conducting research on the accessibility of engineering education. Her efforts have been highlighted by Forbes, the New York Times, and UN Women. Yentel Spiteri and Emma Kalea are 2 young Maltese visionaries and founders of Von Peach, a creative hub and consortium of artists who work remotely to deliver creative experiences and bring an art into doing things differently. Yentel and Emma are focused on the future, bringing their forward-thinking approach and creative solutions to a fast-growing network of global clients. Finally, we present the host of the WOMENTUM 6th Digital Saloon, Katie Gallas. She comes from Germany. Katie is a journalist and a storyteller with a massive crush on all things digital. Katie had worked for German public broadcasters Deutsche Welle, SWR, ARD, and ZDF.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our Digital Saloon, the WOMENTUM in its 6th edition. It's great to have you back on board here, as we're always trying to debate, of course, the contemporary topics concerning women, concerning IT, culture, and digitalization, and of course, always with our special high-scale guests. Just to give you a quick introduction, the WOMENTUM series of the LEAD initiative aims to introduce our partner organizations, and they also want to give you important conversations, which need to be, of course, discussed with enough space and time. And I'm very fortunate to be part of it. My name is Katie Gallas. I'm an international journalist and TV host. Very excited to be part of the WOMENTUM and the Digital Saloon series. We want to hear more about the challenges in our speakers' activism. We'd like to understand a little bit more where to help to develop a better understanding of these challenges, and of course, how to foster the dialogue that can lead in the end to recommendations. What are our questions of today? What does it mean to be a woman in a digital business? And why are female STEMs so important? What are the challenges, but also the success stories when it comes to women in digital leadership positions? And of course, what are the recommendations of our today's Digital Salon guests to increase women leadership or to improve leadership in general in tech companies? That, and of course, so much more now with our guests. We have Miriam Kassou with us, Yentel Spiteri, Emma Kalea, Aya Moualem, and that's the spoiler. Let's have a look.
The world around us is indisputably going digital. The technological revolution is affecting us all and is reshaping the way we live and work. In recent years, research has shown an increase in women's leadership across different sectors. But despite incremental progress, women continue to experience barriers and fewer opportunities for advancement than men, particularly in the digital sector. Among leadership positions in digital businesses, only 24% are held by women. And according to data by the World Economic Forum, less than a third of female students choose to study higher education courses in subjects like maths and engineering, resulting in women being underrepresented in STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, related fields in general. This is why, in the 6th edition of the WOMENTUM Digital Saloon, we are giving the floor to our high-level guests and partners to tell their stories and to understand together the different aspects of the women in digital leadership and what it means to be a leader in the digital sphere.
Miriam, you were saying in an interview, and I quote you here, being a woman in the field of technology is such a challenge. Why do you say so, and what keeps you busy as a digital female leader?
When I first entered the STEM field or the tech world, I knocked on the door of my first company, and when they opened the door, they were all men and all engineers and all developers. I was the only woman in the enterprise in Morocco and in France, and it was such a huge, intimidating moment because I directly started comparing myself. And when I got to the interview, the person that hired me. He asked me questions, and one of these questions was, "Sorry, we can't. We see clearly that you are medium comparing your level or niveau with our other developers, even though I still did not finish my studies, so I was working and studying, and they had more than 5 years each for of experience. So I found that I was put to in a comparison which wasn't really fair. So a woman, when she enters, when I'm gonna talk from my personal perspective. When I entered the field, I found that I had to be as smart as I can and as competent as I can in order not to feel that uh, potential rejection based on my gender, because what is gonna explain the comparison between a person of 5 years of experience and a freshly graduated student that is looking for a job? uh, so that's the first thing. The second thing is that when you say that women are stigmatized in the tech field, it is a real issue, because we are directly judged on our deliverables, and directly put on a position where we should not be ourselves. Because, for example, when a man is angry, he's an angry man. When a woman is angry, she's what, depressed. All right. Donc, I think that the stigma is the most thing that is keeping me going, because I took that on my shoulders. And I think that if we can work together on that, on stopping the stigma, on putting women on the same level of confidence as a man, that would solve a lot of issues related to the unconscious bias.
Emma, when you are listening to the quote from Emma, from Miriam, sorry, Emma, when you are listening to Miriam's quote, being a woman in the field of technology is such a challenge. Would you agree or would you disagree?
I think it's a challenge to be a leader in general in the era of digitalization, because we are moving away from very defined hierarchical structures to more innovative, organic structures. I would say there are plenty of challenges that come around digitalization, regardless of the size of the company. I personally do not feel that being a woman myself is the only defining challenge. I would say it is a challenge because you're battling with stereotypes. However, I wouldn't say it is the only challenge out there with regards to digitalization in general, and with regards to leadership and the leadership skills required in a future that combines artificial intelligence with human intelligence.
Great, you gave us already so many important keywords. Let's jump to your colleague, your agency colleague, Jentel. What would you say to that quote, being a woman in the field of technology is such a challenge? Would you agree or would you disagree, or would you add something from your perspective?
Being a leader is a challenge in itself. There's a lot of skills that one needs to develop and also work on in order to keep up with also what's happening in the world in general. So we are learning how to become leaders when we work remote. We're learning how to become leaders with generations where they don't want to be led as such, but also it's better when we work together and having the team dynamics and also the personal brand on top of any leadership. So I think, again, like being a woman or a man, it doesn't matter. Being a woman actually might make it slightly easier, because as the stereotype says, or as we know from some biology, we as women have better soft skills. We have more inclination to be empathic, and that is mainly because we are able to be mothers as well. So I think even though maybe the society or the where we live, and it's still something which is built by men, being a leader actually as a woman almost comes as a natural thing. So even from when we were in the savannas, people women were leaders of tribes, and people followed them, and they went for hunting sessions while. So I think it's just a natural thing to do, and what needs to happen or what we need to work on is setting up the environment so that younger women feel more empowered to lead as well. Maybe that's where we need to work on.
Thank you, Jentel. Aya, listening to the other speakers and of course talking about our topic today, women in digital leadership. Why did you sign up for this WOMENTUM digital series? Why did you say, yes, this is a topic very close to my heart, despite maybe challenges and open questions?
My answer will follow up directly from where Yentel paused. I was one of two young women in a software engineering lab of more than 20 students during my first year of undergrad studying computer engineering. And the numbers only became worse as I moved through the courses. And so I started an initiative in Lebanon, my home country, and we work particularly empowering young girls to pursue technology. The reason why we did that is in interviews and surveys, asking around, we noticed that girls are less likely to apply to technology majors because they haven't had hands-on exposure to the field ahead of time. And so that's how our work started. And then we noticed that it's not enough to equip girls with technical skills. We do need to foster leadership skills in parallel as well. And so my work for the last 5 years has been on this issue. If you expose young girls to complex leadership decisions, to role models to look up to from a young age, they're much more likely to be prepared to take on tough leadership positions once they graduate from university. And so this panel kind of aligns directly with the mission I've been on for the past few years.
Aya, let's talk about a little bit about the connection and bridging leadership and the digital world with each other, and of course the female leadership or male leadership. You know, we still have to debate, of course, about leadership in general. But what is the bridge that you see between these two different keywords?
Yeah, for sure. I think I agree a lot with what Emma said in terms of we're moving into this new normal where digitalization is going to become the norm and we need to keep up. However, I do think it's important to point out that there are a lot of issues and challenges in leadership based on race, based on gender, and we do need to highlight the additional barriers that women face in the field before we can transcend to a discussion where gender doesn't matter, race and other characteristics don't matter. And so I think pulling in from my experience with All Girls Code, the initiative that I mentioned, leadership and the digital world come hand in hand now. I think during the pandemic, we shifted our work to fully virtual. And so we had to build skills for girls to be able to navigate cultural differences when they are working on projects with teammates from different countries. We had to navigate empathy and putting yourself in your stakeholders' shoes when they're in a different geographic location, when you're working on transnational project. I think also that we have, unfortunately, in tech companies and the industry, we don't have the participation of women isn't yet equal in the sense that the point of view of women is not fairly represented. And that's why tech products that are still being built do not account for women's perspectives. And so if we can bring in more women into the digital world, into leading tech products, we are more likely to build products that serve the entire community as a whole and not just the perspective that's already represented in the industrial teams. And so that's kind of how I see these fields come together.
Yeah, coming together. Emma, when we talk about leadership again, and we're coming now into a very important silo, so to say, what does leadership mean to you? Because when we talk about female leadership or male leadership, I think we first have to define from your side, from the digital world, what does leadership in this digital world mean?
So So leadership, I really think there's different types of leadership that come in depending on phases. You have, the more crisis leaders that require more structure. But I think in an innovative world, I see leadership as a door opener. I see people who are able to create an environment where other people who are even better from a subject matter expertise level to be able to do their job, to encourage, to motivate. I think we are moving away from leadership that is defined by your qualifications or by how long you've been in the company, by the hierarchy, by seniority, to more of the creating an environment, not necessarily being the one that knows best in the room, but the one who knows best in the room, so that you can create an environment of production of people that can think creatively, they can fail, and they can grow. So I think leadership is moving more in that direction, which I personally feel is going to be an interesting phase for the more hierarchical structures and hierarchical companies to adapt, because innovation by virtue requires creativity, it requires being able to fail. And when you come from cultures of extreme conditioning where it's a factory approach, your job is what it was 20 years ago, you're doing the same thing, and now you need to open up and try something different. I think it's going to be interesting to try and put the two together. So for me, leadership is a door opener.
Mary, when we talk about this keyword and the big buzzwords, of course, leadership, how do you define it and what's important from your perspective?
The digital revolution has launched a new era of human empowerment and engagement across business, society, and in every aspect of our lives in our daily life. Like never before, it has that influence on our human behavior than the combined effect with the digital technologies. The effect of this shift on the society is, I think, is tremendous, and in particular are dramatically changing our leadership responsibilities, whether in politics and in the professional domains, businesses, in teaching. Curricula and even in raising children. So in other words, there's a huge impact on our leadership styles, or maybe I'm going to say leadership approaches by the digital transformation. Today, going digital means also being present, means presence. And for example, if you're a company or your business is digitalized enough, it means that it's present and alive, which can give the opportunity to be heard, to be to transfer your values to the world around you. And nowadays we can find many forms of digitalization, although they all converge to to make easy the sharing and transmitting whatever you want to transfer, as long as it's wise and ethical. So talking about the bridge between these two concepts, I think that the bridge for me is the effective digital leadership skill. So it's kind of combining the two concepts. So I think the pace of change means that today leaders need to be reactive and proactive in the face of challenges. A digital leader also must have in mind that while technology is important, people also are crucial as crucial as the technology and as the digital sphere. So I think it's obvious that leadership today is a balancing act that requires a unique set of skills to drive organizations and the workforce in general towards success. And this effective digital leadership skills, we can say, for example, good communication, having a vision, innovation, strategy.
Jentel, maybe also from your perspective, when we talk about this big word, leadership, where do we have to put our priorities on? Emma, I mean, we had a conversation a few weeks ago, and then you were saying leadership is skiing in the slopes, focusing on the path or on the trees. It's really depending on with which leader you're talking about. Leadership. So Jentel, from your perspective, maybe you can give us a glimpse. What's important for you, coming, of course, from your background and with all your perspectives that you have when we talk about this big word, leadership?
I think for me, it is one, knowing who you're leading. So it's really understanding the people you're working with, and also trying to create a dynamic, and the environment that Emma is mentioning is crucial. So the environment where everyone feels safe, that they are able to grow, that when they are making some mistakes, it's an open culture and everybody can criticize each other in a respectful way. And it doesn't necessarily come from the leader. So ideally, the leader creates this environment, as Emma is saying. But also I see it that a good leader is also resilient, maybe just a bit more than the rest of the team, that when there's a crisis, it's the person who brings everybody together and makes them somehow encouraged, or let's say bring all the ropes, the part of the ropes together, and make them work towards a goal. So setting goals which are higher than what we should have, so that it's also motivating for the team, that they don't give up in the middle or they're bored. And also when you understand each person of your team, obviously this depends on the size of an organization or what you're leading. If you're leading a country, you cannot really understand each person of a country, but like you understand a little bit the personality of who you're dealing with and what are they dealing with as well from a personal point of view. I think then you can also empathize when these people are demotivated, or when they are not working as much as they can, or when they're not reaching their full potential. So I think being resilient and also finding this level of empathy with them is also part of successful leadership, I think, which are skills that have been existing since ever and applied since ever as well. But I think now we live in a time where it's even more important to enforce it and to learn it better, to apply it to your teams.
When we talk about the women in digital leaderships, and of course about female drivers, I often read that the awareness is really, really high, but of course the number of female digital leaders remain low. And you were just mentioning these current times where we need, of course, new skills or softer skills for digital leaders. So Jentel, what has changed, or do we hopefully see an improvement in the number of female digital leaders very soon? When we talk about the pandemic, the months and moments that we're just coming out of. So how do you look back to the pandemic? I mean, we're still in some waves, of course, in the pandemic, but looking back to the previous 2 years, talking about women in digital leadership, do you see an improvement of female leaders in the digital world, or do you see different developments?
I mean, also, this is not what I see, but also from statistics, we know that where there are more women working in tech, there's also quite a lot of networks and communities increasing every single week, more or less, which empower women to be in fields that before were more likely to be more men, let's say. However, I think, of course, we're in the beginning of something quite, like, it's just the beginning, and I think it's up to whoever is already in the field and also the younger people to be interested in the topics in tech and digital, and building software that is great for everybody, not just women, because also we don't want to shift the paradigm into something that is anti-men or something like this. I think this is also toxic feminism, and it's also another topic maybe for another momentum talk like this. But I think we should strive for that people who want to be there are there. So I don't think that discussing whether it should be 50-50 or 60-50 or 60-40, or I think this is not the right way of debating this topic. But I would like that people maybe who are in countries that have no opportunity to go work in a big software company and become on a C level, then we should push those women to do it if they want to. If they want to stay at home and bake cakes and have something else, nothing to do with tech, then it's fine as well. So I think we have to see it that way. And I'm sure there are countries in the world where it's easier to get into those positions, but obviously we're not talking about those. We have a lot of other countries where there's still a lot of influence from men, and there's still a lot of questions during the interviews where they should not be there, and there is no opportunity actually, and women are being shut down even from the first little step instead of helped to become better people and actually lead a team eventually.
Yeah, thank you, Yandel. Yandel, you were just saying it's the beginning, so I'd like to pass on to Aya. I mean, you're currently based in California, coming from Morocco, so you have different perspectives, of course, right now on your desk. Do you see also a change of the momentum when we talk about women in digital leadership, or what are your experiences right now in the tech world, in the tech scene, based in the Silicon Valley, in the heart of the digital world right now?
So I actually came from Lebanon, but I've worked with young girls from Morocco, so I can also convey the experience of young girls from the Middle East. I think discussing the recent changes with shifting to hybrid or to more digital work versus what we were used to has provided women with a lot more room for opportunities because, again, for me, coming from Lebanon, there is more encouragement for women to pursue technology majors, but the numbers reach almost 50% of students in STEM majors in some countries in the Arab world being women, which is a very impressive statistic. But at the same time, the number drops really quickly after when women go into industry or go for jobs because socioculturally, technology jobs are still very demanding. And so women must have the flexibility to be primary caretakers at home, but at the same time, if they want to follow their ambitions, that's not a priority. And I think with the pandemic and with shifting to the digital world, women have gotten this flexibility to be able to continue doing their jobs from wherever they are, even after providing for their family as society expects them to do. I think coming from the Arab world to Silicon Valley is a huge shift in terms of how collective the society is, in terms of how people prioritize their ambitions regardless of gender, versus in the Arab world where we're still kind of conditioned based on our gender growing up, what we're expected to do. But I do think that for younger generations like myself, we are more prone to prioritizing our ambitions, at least for the first 10 to 20 years after graduation. So I think that's impressive. I also wanted to touch upon something that Yentil mentioned, and I think is very important. Because the pandemic kind of increased loneliness, it did also open up doors for networks. I think networks are extremely important in sharing advice and experiences that kind of transcend your geographical or cultural setting. And at the same time, I think we still do need to go beyond sharing advice or like giving presentations where industry can actually run hands-on programs for women to go into decision rooms, to make decisions in there, to watch how complex decision-making happens, than just being in the virtual world, listening to experiences. So I think even after we shift to the digital world, we still do need to kind of open these invisible doors for women.
Emma, you are a little bit skeptical, I assume, from your body language. Sorry if I interpreted it not correctly. But when we talk about the sisterhood, or the sisterhood that opens up the doors, would you agree with what Aya just said, or would you say no? We have to literally, we do have to tackle different questions.
I mean, for me, I'm a firm believer of choices. So I think I'm less inclined to speak about gender, and I'm more inclined to speak about individuals. I think historically, this whole gender question has primarily not really been about women in general, but mostly between women who decide to have families and women who don't. So I think that also contributes a lot to how far in a career you can go. I also believe that sometimes there is an expectation that doors are opened for people, so they just walk in on a red carpet and here you are. I think gender is one of the many issues that we are facing out there, gender, if you can call it discrimination. But I think I'm also a firm believer of actions speak louder than words. I have fought skepticism in the past by remaining silent and let my actions speak. One of these practical examples, I was in a company in the past that was extremely hierarchical, and from a cultural perspective, when it comes to the female topic, they were very reluctant to push females into a leadership role. Nowadays, I set up my company along with Yentel, and we are head on head working with the same company as a partner with the same client. That for me sends a message. I don't need to say I'm a woman, therefore I need all of these protocols and all of these trainings. I think there's part which, yes, we need to work as a society, but there's a part which is really boils down to individual stamina, to vision, to perseverance, and to the qualities of an entrepreneur, whether it's a man, a woman, trans, whatever it is. It boils down to individual choices. And I think even in the leadership world amongst the men, that also is the success formula. You have very successful male leaders that have made it up to the highest tiers. You have leaders that have also failed. That's why for me the topic is around leadership and personal choices, regardless of the stereotype. So I appreciate the initiatives. I do come from a country where females are not really there yet. Like Yentel, I refuse to vote for women just because they are women. If I don't resonate with their ideas, I refuse to vote for women for the sake of fulfilling a quota. But I also made the choice to leave that country and to go to a country where I can personally flourish. And when I go back to that country, I am already at a higher level than any male or whoever that there is. Then I can be taken seriously. That's the change I want to make. Not internal, already from Malta, where I come from, but I go to a country where it's difficult to make it, and I bring that back into Malta, and I have that clout, that credibility.
So you left Malta for this new environment and of course new opportunities. Maybe you can tell us how important is this environment for your personal development as a leader to flourish, and to develop from a professional but also from a personal side.
I left Malta because I felt I didn't belong. I left for Switzerland without a job, and I did have some odd jobs until I started, so working in bars and in cafes, until I started my first role. I made the decision at the age of 24, this is not for me. I can't see myself accepting socially defined roles. I disagree with socially defined roles, and even though they are there, I can't really give a toss, to be fair. And I had my own vision. I knew in Malta I would be able to do it, taking it from a purely mathematical approach. I would need almost a lifetime to get to where I am today. So I left for a country that I feel I can resonate with more from a rational level. I started, as I said, 10 years ago, working, like teaching, doing odd jobs in coffee shops, to founding my own company. I went through consulting, and then I founded my own company with Yentel. And I felt I wouldn't look back. So I felt I was taking my own future in my own hands, without relying on the structures and the slow changes that came with being a part of a small country that is very network driven and not really conducive for a woman to be able to run into a business.
Miriam, with your background, of course, coming from Morocco, working in Morocco, maybe you can share also with us some local insights that are keeping you going.
Actually, I've seen many signs of improvement, and I've seen improvement with my proper eyes. But as I worked in the tech field for almost 6 years, 7 years, and I worked under many professional titles, starting from a developer to a software quality manager, and then to an IT manager, and I even worked as an independent consultant. And as a lot of women in the tech field, we can see improvement. We can see that things are going further, but we still the path is still longer than we can imagine. There's a lot of work to do, especially regarding the stigma or the stigmatizing women in the tech field. And in order to solve a problem, we should see it first and acknowledge it, and not denying it, because denying a problem wouldn't solve it. As you know, denying is something very common, something that women face a lot, especially regarding their rights. We always perceive women or women's rights like they are a lot of demands, a lot demanding. So I think that acknowledging the issue and making it look clear to, especially to the decision makers, is the first step to perceiving the phenomena as a real issue and not just a judgment value. And when we say that it's a real phenomena, we can address the statistics that are talking that women are 4 more times more likely than men to consider the gender bias as an obstacle to promotion, to get to responsibilities. And those unconscious bias are real. The struggle is real in the tech world, and especially that the tech domains or the tech field is a pro-culture dominated field. So I think that acknowledging the gender bias is the first step towards addressing the problem correctly and properly. Then businesses or business leaders must take a look to their own perceptions, and in order to combat those stereotypes.
Thank you. Jentel, how important was this change of environment? You also moved from Malta to Switzerland, I assume, for you and for your development. And also, of course, having this vision, that clear vision, what keeps you going. You are very much into artificial intelligence, of course, also in the tech world. So how important is it, besides having leadership skills, to have a clear vision of what you like to perceive, to be successful as a leader in the digital world?
So just as to make it clear, Emma and I have this company together, and one of the reasons maybe we're so successful, so like in the years we've been running, which is 2 years, which is not a lot, is because we are opposite of each other, and also how we think about stuff is completely opposite. So for me, it's not the same reasons why Emma left that I left. I was more inclined to the emotional part of my being at that time, and I had a Swiss boyfriend, and I left to live with him, and so my career at that moment wasn't very clear in my head of what I wanted to do. However, obviously the environment changed. And for me, the environment changed not because in Switzerland, where we live now, there are more women's rights, more than Malta or more than any country. It's just a mentality shift. So more or less the laws are the same. Actually, Switzerland gave voting rights to women so much later than in Malta, for example. I believe it was 1978. So actually, it's even worse as a country, but then there is a sense the country is also bigger, and also there is a somehow more respect to humans in general, I guess, and a bit more discipline. So in that sense, yes, it helped me grow. It also, the fact that there's discipline, and in Malta we don't have that much, maybe it's a bit chaotic and also very network driven, helped me also to discipline myself and be more serious when I take decisions, because I know there are bigger repercussions if I don't do them well. So in that sense, yes, it formed me as a character. I was 24 and I grew more or less from a child to someone who is almost an adult now, in a better environment. However, I still take that the problems still exist. In Malta, maybe they are a bit magnified because also it's a small country. But in my case, I think if I stayed in Malta, I could still have done some cool stuff, because I was very close to a network, which I kind of still kept, but obviously since I left, it kind of reduced itself. And also it's who you know. So obviously my parents are in Malta, and my grandparents, and I studied in Malta. So Here, it was somehow more difficult because Emma and I had to start from scratch. So you go to
was this exactly the most successful part of your journey, of your professional journey so far, because you had to be driven by your vision?
Yes, so exactly. So it's basically, it gives you also more motivation to succeed, and also when you succeed, it's the feeling is impeccable. I mean, the feeling when we hired our first employee is like every single step you do is probably enlarged, or let's say by 50, just because we are not in our own country. So it's also more difficult, I would say. I think we complicated our lives, to be honest, Emma, but I think it's worth it. And for me, though, when I look back at my own country, it's still in my heart. Obviously, I'm never gonna leave that. I also have own some property, and I visit often. And I would like to see maybe the opportunities that are present in Europe, like mainland Europe, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, and all these like the hubs where startups are blooming and women are pitching for millions of money and getting funding in my own country. So I would do anything to help out in this, and be able to, for women who want to do that, that they can do that and they can achieve it. For those who don't, obviously, it's okay as well.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to come back to you, of course, because also you left your home country. No, you're now in the United States of America to flourish and to develop, but you never, of course, Lebanon is still in your heart. Of course, it will never go away. Tell us a little bit more about the empowerment programs that you established, and what does it mean to combine, we also talk about digital skills, but as you mentioned, it's also about teaching leadership. So why is this so important to connect the dots at such a young age, and not just learn coding or digital skills from a very young age?
Yeah, exactly. And I think my voice is very similar to what Emma and Gentle have voiced in terms of we were able to leave, we were able to flourish outside. Unfortunately, the case in Lebanon is a lot of women can't leave, and a lot of women want and have the stamina and have the characteristics it takes for them to succeed in tech. But the barriers are too high, and they have no idea where to start, how to deal with these barriers. And that's where I think empowerment
What is a barrier?
programs.
Sorry to interrupt. What is a barrier? Just for our audience,
Yeah,
when we
for
talk
sure.
about barriers, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So I think the closest example I can give is in Lebanon, sociocultural factors are very much in play. So regardless of how brilliant you are, of whatever scholarship you get, if your family says you're better off going for job with like more preferable timing, to be a caretaker at home and to like have income but not be a primary breadwinner, we might prefer that. So that's like the first factor that comes to mind for me. Another factor is in terms of economics, Lebanon is facing an unprecedented economic crisis, and there is a tendency for families to primarily invest whatever money they have in the education of their sons rather than their daughters, because they expect their sons to be more likely breadwinners for their families. And so these barriers are unfortunately external. They're out of hands for these women. Some women are comfortable speaking up, potentially getting into issues with their families. Some women aren't, because again, it's a collective society. And so these are just some barriers that come to mind. I think so because a lot of these women, and they're young girls to start with, can't leave. We do need to bring in these like empowerment programs back home. In terms of how an empowerment program works, I think anything that does with lecturing young girls about women who made it, just telling them stories is not effective until girls put their hands in, try like making complex decisions on their own, build tech products, and try to understand the points of view of stakeholders, why it's important to bring in different perspectives into their work. And I think when we start doing that from a young age, we give girls this margin of 10 years from middle school to university for them to continue developing these skills slowly. So by the time they graduate, they're actually ready to go into industry and lead effectively. I think there is still a huge divide between effective leadership skills in tech and building technical skills. And that's what empowerment programs need to address. So we can't just say, teach women coding and they'll succeed. And we can't say we expect women to like know everything on their own and we'll just tell them a bit about what it means to be a good leader. I think it always has to be hands-on efforts.
That brings me to the next question, of course. When we talk about these big buzzwords, again, empowerment programs and tech and leadership skills, we all heard about it and we all read it in the project papers, right? So why don't these programs have the sufficient impact concerning the goals that we all have? Because the goals are common, but why is the impact still lacking?
It's actually a very interesting question because if you think about it, these programs have been running for more than a decade now after feminism became a buzzword, and a lot of companies and industry have taken it on as a good PR move rather than actually investing in the meaning behind the programs. I think as long as we don't have enough women in decision rooms and on boards, the impact is going to remain on the low level. So it's just going to be focused on soft skills that are not effective in bringing more women into these rooms where actual change is implemented. That's my personal opinion, but I also do think that an element that we kind of overlook is role models. So even if you tell a woman, even if you bring in women into these empowerment programs and you're like, these are all the technical skills you need, these are all the leadership skills you need, go off on your own with no mentor to look up to, with no role model to connect with, I don't think the empowerment program is effective. And I also think it's important to mention that in terms of empowerment programs, we need all allies on board. So again, it's not a women exclusive environment. We need men, we need people of all genders to pitch in. I think if we kind of pull all of these aspects in, we are more likely to achieve decent impact and not just use empowerment programs as good PR for companies. So yeah.
Aya, who has been your role model when you grew up? Who actually helped you to make this decision? I'd like to work in the tech scene.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a family of most of my relatives have done humanity majors. Maybe they've gone into teaching, law. No one has gone into engineering or technology in any sort. I did not have any role models growing up in terms of tech. When I started university, I heard of Aya Abdel, who's the founder of Little Bits, and she recently sold it. I was very amazed that she started off in Lebanon, went to the same undergrad institution I went to, later on went to MIT, started this startup, sold it. Now she's an investor. I was amazed. And after that, when we started All Girls Code, I made it a point to look into profiles of more Arab women who have made it in tech. Unfortunately, their stories aren't amplified or shared as loudly, so we had to actively look for them and introduce young girls to them. I hope that we get to a point where it's very mainstream to be able to just hear about these role models when you're having discussions with your friends and not actively having to look for them. In my case, I was lucky. Ayab did ended up becoming, she reached out to me after a few features. She sends me opportunities, so we're in touch. That's amazing. But other than that, unfortunately, there were no women in tech who were role models growing up. But I hope we're changing that with All Girls Code now.
Would you like to be a role model for the young girls, or do anyone call you already a role model? Have you heard about that already from the classrooms?
I have, and it's kind of scary because it puts a lot of pressure on you. But I think one of the ideas we always highlight is role models should be brave and not perfect, and it's okay to make mistakes. And so that kind of gives the girls a sense of, if we're looking up to someone who's a leader or in technology, they're not supposed to make every single right decision. We can learn from their failures as well. And I think growing up in the Arab world, we are generally risk averse. And so this push to like accept failure and go for risks has been an interesting development in terms of how we define a leader, especially in the digital world where it's very uncertain. We don't know if our next move is going to work or not. So I hope if I'm a role model, I'm sharing my failures openly for others to learn from them. And if I'm making right decisions, that I'm sharing my experience and how I got to the decision.
When we talk about role models, Mariam, have you also had a role model, or have you been, inspired by any role models, or are you still your own role model in your journey?
Actually, a role model. I did not have a role model during my childhood. I did not knew that there is such a concept, such a notion, such a such a thing that we have to have role models in our lives in order to look up to them, to get inspired, and to see to project ourselves, or to see potential in people. I can say that I was different when I was a kid, as I could not find myself, and like I could not. Um, I never imitated anyone, so I think that if I did something, if I achieved something, it was by pure inspiration. From what? From what? I want to say that my role model is my mom, because she believed in me.
Emma, of course, you and Jentel, you're both working together in Switzerland with a lot of companies that come from a very traditional background. And when we talk about very uncertain times and, of course, digital worlds, talking about, transition, transformation, how do you translate that to your clients? And of course, how do you make it possible to come into a digital change with your clients? So what is the communication from your agency that you are actually delivering to bridge the gap towards a transition and a transformation for your clients, coming from, as I said, from a very traditional background like pharmacy, where digitalization is of course important, but still at the beginning, right, Emma?
So I am a firm believer of the yin and the yang. I believe that opposites go very well together. I, in general, have quite a strong competitive streak in me. I tend to look at something and craft in my head countless possibilities of how to go about it. So I'm really driven by the adrenaline of a challenge, and I think that has been just to go back to the role model question you had before. For me, the role model was more looking at someone on stage and saying, one day that's going to be me. That was the biggest driver, I think, other than specific people. But how do we bring that to clients is a lot of listening, a lot of maybe not constantly making clear the big wild vision you have in your head, but to kind of walk them through it at their pace.
Take their
So
hands, right, and walk
they
together.
and it's like, and also, you come, we're a creative hub, so we have artists that work with us, so we are on the very creative side of the spectrum, so we do come up with extremely wild ideas. And I think the more traditional side almost balances nicely the more extravagant, out there ideas with the more practical and practical elements that help that idea really resonate. And I think for that, it's really boils down to the relationship that you have with clients. And as a hub, what we pride ourselves with is that we get our hands dirty. So we don't have one brief with a client and then we lock ourselves up somewhere and come up with something. We co-create, whether it's a campaign or whether it's an augmented reality experience or whatever it is. We co-create and we move with these clients as one, as a unit. And for them, the having someone who's not part of the topic in general brings them a lot of energy. Having creative content is extremely empowering. For the more shy, could be introverted, structured engineers who have the amazing brains, but sometimes not really the creative spirit that is required to resonate with audiences. So I think the working together is a big part of what we do, and allowing ourselves the openness to be challenged with our ideas and create a culture where we also challenge them. So we work together as a unit. I believe that has been our biggest success formula with regards to our hub.
Thank you, Emma. Yentel, when we talk about the agency and, of course, the creation of this environment, you also need people, right, that shape this environment. But of course, when we talk about women staff or female staff in the tech world, I think there is a gap or lacking a lot of numbers. And of course, you are responsible for HR and recruitment. So, what is your formula to find the right people for the right jobs in the tech world? Because a lot of people are looking for highly skilled people. So, please tell us your secret.
Well, yeah, I can only speak. I've been doing recruitment or helping in recruitment since I started to work. Actually, even when I graduated, my first job, it was pretty an open culture, and I've been helping with recruitment more or less since the beginning, and that helped me a lot to now. Eventually, when it came to One Peach, we can really recruit and try to choose the best person. And so far, I think, Emma, we have done a good job. Not sure how. No, but I think so. We started the Amman Diary always. So the most difficult thing is obviously to reduce the biases that we already have. Emma and I were brought up in the same country, but we are very different. Our families somehow they're same but different. So we will both have our own biases, and we try to kill those at first, because otherwise we're basically recruiting people like exactly like us, and that is obviously a failed equation. Recently, with the last two recruits, I believe even we involved the whole team. So obviously, the recruitment process took much longer than we expected, because we basically opened up the applications. We made almost like a competition, internal competition, with where recruits were finalists, and we asked them in for a meeting. And then for the last let's say step, we had something like a workshop between all those finalists. Like we had 5 for 4 finalists, and we asked them to perform, and this was something which was, some people were skeptic, let's say, but it worked well in the end. We chose the person who I think makes a lot of sense for her company, and I think for herself as well. So obviously, when it comes to how many applications we receive and from who they are, when we look at, let's say, gender on paper, mostly it's women who are very young. So it's like, yeah, coming out of university, 25-year-olds. We do see a gap for women who are 25 to, let's say, 39 or so, like a bit older. Maybe women who are more interested to start a family, to not dedicate 100% to a creative role where, or a startup where you know that it's gonna take most of your life.
But that's the point. How do we also get these women, for example? What is needed from your perspective? Because they are lacking in the working field.
I mean, yes, and when I worked as a product manager in the previous role, it was also the same concept. And in that company, we strived for having the 50-50 quota. And I used to discuss with male colleagues and be like, but how can we have 50-50 male quota when no one applies, you know? The first thing they need to do is apply. So I think we should not force anyone. Of course, if they don't want to apply for a senior technical role, maybe they don't feel empowered, as Aya said. Maybe the technical skills are not enough. So then there's the empowerment programs that help for that. But honestly, I also believe that some women just don't want that, and it's okay as well. So I think it will start to shift, because also from a society point of view, in some countries, maybe women are able are not being frowned upon when they are not having kids, or not when they are married at below the age of 30 or something like this. So I think this is shifting slowly. But yes, there are countries where this is, maybe, as Aya said, Lebanon is, there's still 3 steps to do before we get to that.
Absolutely.
So I think in the future it will change. What can we do? I guess encourage women to step out of their comfort zones, maybe also give, like, I'm not sure, support whenever they think they need support with their kids, or I'm not sure. I don't have a solution on top of my head, but for sure it's a topic to discuss further. But I don't blame men for this. Obviously, it's definitely not the case. It's much deeper than that.
Yes, thank you. We are already at the end of our little conversation here. I'd like to have a last round. Let's think back 5 years to your 5-year younger self. So we are all still young. Let's, go
Thank you.
prior to the pandemic. But maybe you have a recommendation to your younger self 5 years ago about being a leader, about, coming into this digital world, starting a new position, or like, flourish in your position as a leader. What would be your advice? Also, of course, it's an advice for our audience to keep in mind, to not make the same mistakes, or maybe the same mistakes because they were important for you to learn and to flourish. So what would you like to share with us when you think back 5 years to your little bit younger self? What would be a recommendation to send back in time? Aya.
Yes, I think my 5 years younger self was younger than 20 years old, so that's very young. I think for me, I would tell myself to not be afraid of failure and not be afraid of uncertainty, and to be very comfortable with reaching out for help when I need it. I think that because there's this culture of breeding perfect girls, we're not expected to make mistakes. We're expected to be very risk averse, and I was not able to go beyond my comfort zone until I started making mistakes and failing. And I think that also equipped me to leave Lebanon, come to Silicon Valley, where I still do make a lot of mistakes, but I think that's as important of an experience as building successful products. I think these are skills that are very necessary for any future leader, because other than that, you won't be able to grow in your role, whatever your leadership position is.
Thank you, Aya. Thank you so much for joining us today. And of course, all the best. Good luck for All Girls Code, for your project in Lebanon, and of course, for your time in Silicon Valley. Emma, what would you say to your 5 year younger self?
I would say that the mantra that I had already started following, but I think I should have followed even stronger, is in one of Roosevelt's quote, which is, "Do what in your head and heart feels right, for you will be criticized anyways." So I think that pretty much defines the path I've taken. Trust more, be less territorial, accept that there are people who are better than you at doing things, and being a leader sometimes is to say, "You've done it much better than I am. I'm going to clean the slate and leave that to you." And negotiation, which in the meantime, I learned how to love. I love negotiating contracts. I love negotiating rates. It gives me a kick. So learn how to negotiate already from earlier times. Negotiate with your boss for working from home 2 times a week, take a different road other than the same one every day, learn how to deal with change and unpredictability. And I would say it will be much easier as you grow older to challenge and to negotiate. And I think these are skills that come in handy.
Thank you so much, Emma, also for joining us today. It's a big pleasure to have you here in the Momentum series. Yentil.
So first of all, I would tell myself to buy more Bitcoin or crypto 5 years ago, because I think I would have made a good deal. But other than that, I would also tell myself probably to not be afraid. That I think for me, moving to a bigger country, I think the level of fear had increased at a point. I was very insecure, and it took me a while to come out of that insecurity bubble that I had. So I had to pass through a bunch of negative experiences actually to build myself again and then be able to do certain things. So I would be like, yeah, take more risks, make more mistakes. It's fine, go all in. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still worth it, even if you fail. So yeah, and also what Emma said, I think learning how to sell yourself as well, not just like your services, is really important, in a sense that you know yourself best and you know what you're worth. And it's basically the faster you learn how to sell yourself to people and convince them that you can work together and do cool things together, then it's good for you, and you can live the life that you have always dreamed, like, or always dreamt of, right? So that's the point.
Thank you, Yentil. And I would love to continue this crypto debate with you on a different on a different occasion. Very interesting. Last but not least, Miriam, what would be your recommendation? Let us know.
Oh my God, what would I say to my 5 years old self? I would say something huge. is that during 2022, you will get how to say it? You will face a huge challenge in your life. Please hang tight, and please do not settle for less. And please know that know your worth and act accordingly. Challenges are part of life, and even mental breakdowns can be solved. And take really nice care of your mental health, and sacralize work-life balance.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much to all of you. Thanks for listening, ladies and gentlemen, the audience. And of course, I hope to see you soon again for our next Digital Saloon. Also, check out the previous episodes on our YouTube channel or follow along on social media. Tag us or send us your comments. If you have comments or questions, please don't hesitate to write us an email or message or comment below the photos. And with that being said, stay healthy and strong. And I can't wait until we meet again. See you soon.
I'm Nusa Ayari, CEO MENA of the LEAD Initiative.
And I'm Jörg Schäfer, founder and CEO Europe. Together,
we thank you for watching the Saloon.
And want to ask you to check out our YouTube channel and our website.
Stay tuned and do not hesitate to reach out to us.